Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Guns and Guitars, and today we are going to look at what it's like building custom guitars with a cheap, budget-friendly desktop CNC machine like the FoxAlien Masuter Pro. Now, if you're not into guitar building, but you want to know more about the CNC machine, this is a full in-depth review, so there's going to be lots of information in here for you. Also, if you're into guitar building, but you're not necessarily interested in the Masuter Pro specifically, there's going to be lots of tips and tricks for building guitars with a cheap, budget-friendly desktop CNC machine. Now, this video is going to be pretty long, so let's get started. I'm Dan, this is Guns and Guitars. All right, guys, now I've logged over 50 hours on this machine now, and most of that was for guitar building, and so I think that makes me pretty qualified to make this video. So firstly, let's talk about why I chose the Masuter Pro and what makes it so good for a first CNC for a guitar builder. Well, reason number one is pretty obvious, and that's the price. This thing comes in at just $629 from the FoxAlien website. It's a little bit more if you buy it from Amazon. One of the reasons why I love this machine is because of the customer service and the community support that comes along with FoxAlien. I joined the FoxAlien Facebook group as well as another Facebook group called FoxAlien Unofficial Upgrades, and it is just full of really awesome, really helpful people that just honestly really want to help you get your machine up and running the best possible. And in addition to that, FoxAlien does have pretty excellent technical support considering that they are based in China, and so there is a little bit of a language barrier, but they definitely do their best to try to help you get up and running as well. Now, the next reason why I chose the Masuter Pro is because it's scalable. And by scalable, I mean expandable. They offer an extension kit for it, so you can get into this machine at a low price, and then at a later date, when you have a little more money, expand it, which is pretty awesome. This thing is also extremely user-friendly. So if you're new to CNC stuff, it's a great starter machine because it's very easy to assemble. Many of you guys joined me on a live stream where I put this thing together. It also integrates seamlessly with Easel, which is the software that I've been using for guitar building up until this point. And it worked the first time that I plugged it in. Easel recognized it, and I was able to go straight into carving. And the last reason, and maybe not a reason specific to the FoxAlien Masuter Pro, is that having a basic desktop CNC in the workshop does add to your tool arsenal. It can be used for so many things, like slab flattening. You can do carving. You can do routing. You can buy an optional upgraded laser attachment for it and do laser engraving. But not only that, you can use it to make tools and furniture for your workshop. Now, to use the Masuter Pro for guitar building specifically, unfortunately, it doesn't come out of the box optimized for guitar building. So there's a couple of little things that you need to do and kind of rearrange some stuff. Firstly, and the biggest issue that I have with the Masuter Pro is that the X-axis and Z-axis don't have enough clearance for routing out a full-size 2-inch thick guitar body. As you can see the way it's sitting right here, that router bit just sits barely above it. And the only reason why it sits above it right now is because I've modified it. You'll notice that the factory wasteboard is actually sitting underneath the frame, okay? The way FoxAlien tells you to configure it is with that sitting on top of the frame. The problem is, once it's sitting on top of the frame, you lose an extra ½ an inch, and then you just can't get the spindle high enough to route out a full-size guitar body. And it's a little bit frustrating. So, simple solution, just mount your wasteboard underneath the frame, and then I have a ½ inch MDF wasteboard sitting on top of it, and with that, I barely get enough clearance. This is an 1¾ inch thick guitar body, and I have about 1/4 inch clearance right there. If I needed a little more clearance than that, I can always remove my MDF wasteboard and route with it clamped directly to the FoxAlien factory wasteboard. Oh my goodness, that's so much better. Look at all this clearance we have now. That's great. You'll also notice that this is not the factory 60-watt spindle that comes with it. This is the Makita compact trim router, and that was the first legitimate upgrade that I made to this machine. Just knowing that I was going to be routing out hardwoods for hours on end, I thought it best to just right from the get-go get a spindle that can handle it. Now, I opted to go with the Makita router as opposed to the upgraded FoxAlien 300-watt spindle because honestly, I spoke to FoxAlien. I told them that I was going to be using this for routing out hardwoods, and they told me that the Makita would probably serve me better for a little bit less money. Now, the downside to using the Makita router as opposed to a integrated spindle is that the CNC machine has no control over when the spindle turns on or off, or over the speed or RPM. And so initially when I was running this thing, I would just manually turn it on when it was time to route and manually turn it off when I was done. And you can get by like that for quite a while, honestly. You just need to keep a close eye on your CNC machine, because if things start going haywire, the auto stop function is not going to stop the router. It will have to be turned off or unplugged manually. You'll notice here that I have some cardstock covers that I made. The reason why I ended up making those covers is I realized that a lot of my carves were going haywire because the wheels were getting hung up on debris that was falling onto the belts. Now, a lot of that is solved by just having a good quality dust collection system, which brings me to the next upgrade that I had to make. Now, in my initial test of this CNC router, I found that this thing throws a ton of sawdust. And I mean a ton of sawdust. And I shared this garage with my father-in-law, and it would just not be responsible for me to run this thing in here and just be throwing sawdust all over the place. Hands down, probably the best upgrade you can do for your CNC machine is to get a vacuum dust shoe. This is the Suck It Up dust shoe, and it's available at suckitup.net. I'll put a link down there in the description. And I'm gonna go ahead and show you what makes this dust shoe so special above the rest. This thing clamps just directly to the Makita router, so it goes up and down with the spindle, and it's got a nozzle on there for any standard shop vac. And the real genius of the design is that the bottom half is held on by magnets, so it makes it really easy for tool changes to swap out your router bit. And then when you're done, snap that back on. You didn't have to remove the hose or anything. It's ready to rock. Now, while that dust shoe and a shop vac is excellent for extracting sawdust, which is obviously what it's designed for, it actually has another benefit too that is very helpful. And that's because it's directing extra airflow past the bottom of the router. It's keeping your router bit cool, and it's helping with cooling for the router itself. Since these compact trim routers aren't necessarily meant to be run for hours and hours and hours on end like a CNC spindle, having that extra cooling in there is going to help with the longevity of your router as well as your router bits. And so having that dust shoe on there really was a game changer for the frustrations that I was having. So that and the dust covers, keeping the dust off of the wheels and belts, really helped this thing do what it's designed to do. That being said, it seems like these are issues caused by debris on the belts and wheels, but honestly, it's issues caused by underpowered stepper motors, because if it had more powerful stepper motors, it wouldn't get hung up on the debris so easily and cause the machine to lose steps and go off track on the carve. And so that was the biggest learning curve for me, was understanding the limitation of this machine itself and running it slow enough that if it did get hung up on something, it would still have enough power to power through it and continue with the carve instead of getting hung up and ruining everything. So with this dust boot installed and a $20 shop vac that I found on Facebook Marketplace, along with my homemade DIY dust covers, I was finally in business for guitar building. And I was able to go straight into routing out neck and pickup cavities. And that was really the first way that I used this machine, because the next limitation of it is the size. And I knew that when I decided to get this machine, that it just barely wasn't big enough to route out a full-size guitar body. Now, if you're really clever with your design, you probably could design a guitar body that does fit in the 15 3/4 by 15 3/4 work area. But for me, that was just about 2 inches too short for my designs. So that's what I did before I installed the extension kit that's on it now. I just did the neck and pickup and electronics cavities on the Masuter Pro, and then I cut out the overall shape the old-fashioned way with my bandsaw or a jigsaw. And that got me by for a really long time, just kind of taking out some of the more sucky parts about guitar building. I don't really love routing, especially when I have to route a really deep cavity like an electronics cavity. It just takes forever, and it requires tool changes, swapping between different router bits. And it's just one of my least favorite jobs. And so being able to set this thing up to do the more sucky tasks like routing out those cavities freed me up to be able to work on some of the other parts of guitar building. It really increased my productivity and it increased my positive attitude because I don't have to do so much routing. And once I finally started getting successful carves with this thing, I gained more and more confidence and started using it more and more. I even used this thing to make a custom pedal enclosure for a distortion pedal out of scrap wood that I had laying around, and I think it turned out pretty freaking awesome. Now I have to give a huge shout out to my buddy Sean from the YouTube channel Scar My Guitar. He's become a real good friend of mine, and I think without him, I probably would have thrown this machine in the trash. He gave me so much helpful information. He helped edit my projects in easel so that they would work better. I just can't say enough nice things about how much he helped me out. But probably the two biggest tricks he taught me was how to line up a guitar body for routing. All right, so here I've got this elm body that I already cut the shape out of. Now typically I would just put a blank slab on here, let it cut out the neck and pickup routes, and then I would put one of my templates on here, trace out the body, and cut that out on the bandsaw. But I cut this out before I knew I was getting a CNC machine. And so I have to figure out how to get my pickup routes on here in the right spot. A tip that my buddy Sean gave me for cutting out the back electronics route is that he would actually run the CNC machine on his wasteboard to trace out the body shape and then glue his body in place so that he can do the electronics cavity, which is absolutely genius. So I'm gonna do the same thing, but I'm gonna do it for the front. Well, that turned out pretty freaking killer. It did take a long time, took 3 hours and 40 minutes. So I guess with these budget-friendly CNC machines, patience is the name of the game. But you know what I did during that 3 hours and 40 minutes? I didn't have to route out any neck pockets, that's for sure. As well as how to hold it down, okay? A big issue in a learning curve is tool paths, okay? If you're using clamps to hold down your guitar bodies, then you need to be able to edit your tool path to go around the clamps so you don't hit a clamp and break your bit, break your clamp, break everything, right? And so he taught me the trick of just simply using hot glue to secure your lumber to your wasteboard. And man, that trick works so well, and you don't have to worry about your router hitting it and messing it up, and it holds your wood very securely. A huge shout out to Sean because I recently followed one of his video tutorials to make this awesome fretboard radius jig. And in his video tutorial, he not only shows you how to make this jig in the software, but he actually also shares his file with you so that you don't have to make it at all. You just use his file, which is what I did. And I made two fretboard radiuses, one 9.5 inch and one 12 inch. And I gotta say, they work absolutely spectacular. I was able to radius a fretboard in about 45 seconds. It usually takes me about 45 minutes to an hour to do it the old-fashioned way. But I'm not gonna show you guys how to assemble that jig or how to use it in this video. If you guys are interested in that information, head over to Sean's channel. There's a link to it down in the description. And so I guess that's one of the points that I wanna make in this video is that, I mean, probably some of you guys wouldn't bat an eye over spending $300 on a planing machine or spending $100 on a fretboard radius jig or spending extra money to get your fretboards pre-radius. And that's where a machine like this really shines. Not only can you use it to do all of those things, but you could also use it to make money doing all of those things for other people. CNC machines, they pay for themselves really fast. And so maybe up until this point, you've been watching this video thinking, yeah, it's great that that CNC machine is only like $600, but then you got to put a couple $100 worth of upgrades into it. And what I'm here to tell you is that once you get your machine up and running, those upgrades pay for themselves. They either pay for themselves by making you money or by saving you money. And so speaking of upgrades, let's go ahead and talk about two more upgrades that I think you should think about if you're considering getting a Masuter Pro. The first being an IoT relay. Now this is essentially just a power strip that plugs into your spindle connection on your control box and allows you to turn the router on and off by the machine. That way if you have to hit the emergency stop button, your router will stop with your machine. And so if you've happened to step out when your machine finishes carving, it will automatically stop your router and your dust collection as well, which is super handy. And the last upgrade that I'm going to recommend if you're going to be using this machine for guitar building, and it's the #1 reason why I chose the Masuter Pro over any of the other budget-friendly CNC machines, is the extension kit that is now available from FoxAlien. All right, guys, great news. Today, my extension kit arrived for my Masuter Pro. I've been waiting on this for a couple of months and I'm very excited. So let's get that installed, and then maybe later today we can route out a full-size guitar body front and back. It includes a really nice T-slot frame, which again you can see I've mounted underneath. It also includes extra extrusions to stiffen up the frame, because when you expand it, it allows more opportunity for torque to be able to twist it. They also included a pre-wired drag chain harness, which makes installation so easy. You don't need to extend the wires yourself. You don't need to feed any wires through the drag chain. It's just plug and play. I mean, I probably had the extension kit together in about the same amount of time it took me to build the router to begin with, which wasn't long. It's like 30 or 45 minutes. And once I got it all installed, I got a little ambitious, okay? I was probably overconfident in all the successful carves that I've had, and I had a lot of confidence in the new stiffer frame. And so I ran it a little bit harder than I should have. Well, unfortunately, my first carve with the extension kit did not go as planned. You can see it lost quite a few steps here. I was really hoping with brand new belts and brand new tension set that I could carve a little bit deeper per pass and kind of speed up the process a little bit with this thing, but that's clearly not the case. Also thought I could get away with not having the dust covers over the belts to prevent the dust from getting underneath the belt, and that's clearly not the case either. So I'm going to fab up some dust covers for this Y-axis real quick, and then I'm going to run this carve again with my usual depth per pass, which is about half what I was running here, and see if I can get consistent results again. But once I slowed the speeds down, then I was able to route out this guitar body successfully. Well, that turned out all right. So now all I gotta do is flip this body over, place it down inside those constraints we just carved. And boy, did it turn out beautiful. Front and back. Now, when I say you need to carve slowly, it took 6 hours to do this front and back. Right now I'm running it at 60 inches per minute with a cut depth of 0.025 inches. It just takes a long time. But anytime I try to increase the speed, the carve goes haywire. So that's pretty much the limit of this machine when you're carving hardwood like this using a 1/4 inch upcut or compression bit. And so if you're considering getting this machine and using it for guitar building, I'm gonna say that's where you should start. Start with a 1/4 inch upcut bit, and start with those settings, 60 inches per minute and a depth per pass of 0.025 inches. That should get you up in carving without any issues. But again, the problems with speed and depth per pass with this machine stem from the underpowered stepper motors. Now, they make much more powerful NEMA 17 stepper motors that I'm seriously considering purchasing to upgrade this machine, because honestly, I would love to get a full-size guitar body carved in about 4 hours as opposed to 6, and I don't think that's super unreasonable, because then I could get 2 bodies carved front and back over the course of a workday while I'm working on other stuff, which would be really nice. And so I have an email into FoxAlien to see if the drivers on the control board can handle the 2.1 amp stepper motors. I'll put a link to those down in the description, and I'll let you guys know if FoxAlien says that those are usable without upgrading the driver board or not. But they're really not that expensive. It's like 42 bucks for a 3-pack, which is what you need for the 2 Ys and the X. I don't think you need to upgrade the Z-axis. I think it's strong enough, especially since the Z-axis doesn't use a belt, it uses a lead screw. And so I think that's gonna work just fine. Now, if you wanna upgrade to NEMA 23 motors, I did do a quick Google search and I found that they do make adapter plates for the NEMA 17 to NEMA 23 motors. And once you get to NEMA 23 motors, there are some seriously beastly CNC machines that use high torque NEMA 23 motors. So that would definitely get you where you need to go power-wise. The problem is, once you start running NEMA 23 motors, the driver board in the Masuter Pro certainly cannot handle it. So you would have to upgrade your control box as well. And so that's why I'm waiting to hear from FoxAlien. If I don't need to upgrade the driver boards to get the higher torque NEMA 17 motors on there, then that's gonna be my next upgrade. But if either way I'm going to have to upgrade the driver boards, I might as well go for it and install the NEMA 23 motors. And now I've talked a lot in this video about how to upgrade this thing to make it work better for guitar building. And that's probably the coolest thing about the Masuter Pro is that it is so scalable. You don't have to go all in into a $1,500 machine right up front. You can get in for a really low price, and then as you're saving money or making money with it, you can afford these optional upgrades. And that's initially what turned me onto it. And you know me, I'm Mr. DIY, so I love upgrading stuff. Now, again, I can't stress enough how important it is that you guys join the FoxAlien CNC Facebook group if you are considering getting a CNC machine. Because after I got my Masuter Pro, reading up on the Facebook group, I realized that I probably should have got the FoxAlien 4040 XE. It's a bit more expensive. It starts at $900, but it comes with a beefier control box, beefier drivers, and the beefier NEMA 23 stepper motors. And so I knew it was a more rugged machine. And the reason why I didn't go for it initially is because there's no official FoxAlien extension kit for it. So I thought that I was going to be limited to the 15x15 work area. But now, having dabbled in CNC quite a bit, it's easy to see that the 4040 XE is just as scalable as the Masuter Pro. And in fact, if you join the FoxAlien unofficial upgrades group, you will see lots of people just mega beasting out those 4040 XEs, building them up bigger and stronger than X-Carves and Shapeokos and other, comparable machines. And so the possibilities are a little more endless with that machine, whereas this one is limited by the control box and the NEMA 17 size motors. But it's just something to consider. I don't by any means regret getting the Masuter Pro, but if I had it to do over again, maybe I would have weighed the pros and cons of the more expensive 4040 XE a little harder than I did. But all that being said, I've got this machine working for me, and it's been working really hard. 50 or 60 hours on it, like I mentioned earlier, and it's still running strong, and it does lots of tasks that I hate doing for me, which is hands down 100% worth it. Now, if you saw this guitar body and you're thinking what I'm thinking, man, this thing turned out so dang good, it is for sale. Unfortunately, I can't build it for you because I'm still way behind on my last round of pre-orders, but if you want to buy it as a neck and body only kit, I've created a listing for it on my website. You can choose if you want a rosewood fingerboard or a maple fingerboard on that neck, and you can build it up and finish it yourself. And before it ships out, of course, I will finish it up by, rounding over the edges, doing the comfort carves, and drilling all the holes for the electronics, so that'll be good to go. But unfortunately, by the time you're watching this video, I have already left the country on a family vacation. So just know that if you do decide to order it, it's not going to ship until I'm back in town on the 18th. And if you're interested in getting into CNC guitar building with a machine like the Masuter Pro or the 4040 XE, I've got links to all the stuff that I talked about down in the description. And if you're interested in seeing how you can use a cheap desktop CNC laser for guitar building, like making this custom inlaid and pre-slotted fingerboard or this awesome guitar pedal enclosure, then make sure you are subscribed because that's next week's video. I'm Dan, this is Guns and Guitars, and I'll see you in that video.